Welcome back. Great to see everybody. Would ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber. Give the senator from the 53rd time to get himself together over there. Chair would like to recognize the well-dressed senator from the 53rd.
Mr. President, it's good to see you this afternoon. Thank you for your leadership in the great state of Georgia. Just a moment of time. I don't have anything funny to say today, but something historic. 1917, the Kennesaw Mountains National Battlefield was recognized as a national battlefield, and it is a great place for tourism and a lot of history for our country. The journal has been read and found to be correct.
You seem a little nervous. You're not used to talking with this many senators actually in the room.
I know, and that's amazing, but glad to see all my fellow senators and lady senators. We're here to work hard for the people of our districts.
Appreciate your pearls of wisdom. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 91 by Senator James of the 35th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 16 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to health so as to require local boards of education to provide
education and youth.
Senate Bill 92 by Senators Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 2 of Chapter 13 of Title 16 of the OCGA relating to schedules, offenses, and penalties regarding the
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 93 by Senators Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to election and primaries generally, so as to provide for the use of portable and movable polling facilities. Senate Bill 94 by Senators Ginn of the 47th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 5 of Chapter 5 of Title 12 of the OCGA relating to rivers and river basins relative to dam safety so as to prohibit the building of
natural resources.
Senate Bill 95 by Senators Ginn of the 47th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 50 of the OCGA relating to state government so as to provide conditions for meeting and public hearings to be held by teleconference.
Government oversight.
Senate Bill 96 by Senators Jackson of the 2nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 17 of Title 45 of the OCGA relating to notaries public so as to provide that the identification
Veterans, military, and homeland security.
Senate Bill 97 by Senators Jackson of the 2nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 20-3-66 of the OCGA relating to determination of in-state resident status of students for tuition or fees.
Higher education.
Senate Bill 98 by Senators Beach of the 21st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 32 of the OCGA relating to highways, bridges, and ferries so as to provide for eligible expenditures.
Transportation.
Senate Bill 99 by Senators Parent of the 42nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries generally so as to provide that all advanced voting locations.
Ethics.
Senate Bill 100 by Senators Watson of the 1st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to state government so as to provide that this state shall observe
government oversight.
Senate Bill 101 by Senators Parent of the 42nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 35-3-34 of the OCGA relating to disclosure and dissemination of criminal records to provide persons and businesses relating responsibility.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 102 by Senators Kennedy of the 18th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 46 of the OCGA relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to prohibit governmental entities from adopting
regulated industries.
Senate Bill 103 by Senators James of the 35th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 24 of Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance generally so as to provide that diagnostic examinations for breast cancer shall not be treated
insurance
less.
And labor.
Senate Resolution 76 by Senator Jackson of the 2nd, a resolution creating the Senate Study Committee on Employee Misclassification and for other purposes.
Rules.
This completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read reports of standing committees now?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 44, do pass. Senate Bill 60, do pass. Respectively submitted, Senator Albers of the 56th. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read bills and resolutions for the second time?
Senate Bill number 4 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, drug abuse treatment and education programs, patient brokering, prohibit, definitions, expectations, penalties, provide. Senate Resolution 26 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others, general obligation debt, make loans or grants, counties, municipalities, consolidated governments, and local authorities, airports authorize the state-CA. House Bill 80 by Representative Ralston of the 7th and others, supplemental appropriations, state fiscal year, July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. This completes the order, Mr. President.
It's now time for a morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon. I would like for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 35th, 36, 38, tentatively the 37th.
Without objection, the senators from the 35th, 36th, 38th, and your word, not mine, tentatively the 37th. Are there any other motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the minority leader.
Oh my God. Unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 39th and the 30, I guess he did the 36th, didn't he?
36 has already been excused. Without objection, the senator from the 39th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 50th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 50th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? The chair sees none. The secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? The hallway looks clear. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. All right, it's now time for our afternoon devotional. Ask that all senators take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Ask the doorkeeper secure the chamber at this time. I'd like to invite the senator from the 33rd to lead us in our pledge and introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. I have the pleasure today of introducing the pastor of the Greater Church of God in Christ, Pastor Brown. Pastor Matthew L. Brown is a native of Buffalo, New York. He is an anointed teacher, exceptional administrator, author, and gifted motivational speaker. In 2011, he was appointed as the senior pastor of Greater Community Church of God in Christ, where he reinvigorated life into the church and focused on bringing kingdom to community. Pastor Brown, for many years, has many years of experience as a director of communication to the mayor of Buffalo, New York, where he served him well in developing a comprehensive vision that addresses the diverse needs of people he is committed to serve. Pastor Brown and I, we've done a lot of work in the community together, trying to bring people, save souls, and he's still working on mine. But I remember one time I was puzzled, and I had just something I was trying to figure out, and then the pastor reminded me of King Solomon's wisdom. And he asked me, did I know where his temple was located? I said upside his head, but that's a joke. But now I introduce Pastor Brown.
Thank you, Senator Rett, Mr. President, and to the esteemed leaders of this legislature. The psalmist writes in Psalm 91 and 2 from the easy reading version, and suggests, I will say to the Lord, you are my strong place where I may be safe. You are my God, and I trust in you. In a real sense, all life, as Dr. King has quoted, is interrelated. All men are caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. And whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. My prayer for this sainted and august chamber is that God will help us to walk in civility, to treat one another with compassion, to live and to think in clarity, that He provides grace for emotional and social intelligence to hear the needs of our beloved community of the state of Georgia. And then we ask the Lord for wisdom, wisdom to apply our best selves to our most difficult challenges. And lastly, we ask for unity, the transformational grace which makes us whole, not fragmented, but whole in mind, body, and soul. We pray that in the name of our God, amen, and thank you.
Senate will come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Governor, members of the Senate. The year was 2003. The month was April. The diagnosis was heart attack. The cardiac cath showed 3 blockages. You know, that was me. I was short of breath. I had a dry mouth. I also was planning my 50th birthday. Thanks be to God, I'm still here. This past Friday was the annual Go Red for Women's Day, and I thank you all for recognizing that. Historically, I would have asked everybody in the chamber to make sure you were ready for that day, either wearing your red tie, wearing something red, and ladies wearing red, so that we would take our picture in our red for Go Red for Women. Because you see, heart disease is the #1 killer of women and men too, believe it or not. It kills more people than all the cancers. So I take it serious, being that I am a survivor. I also want to take a moment to thank my Congressman, David Scott, who stepped up and had a vaccine fair. So the last time I stood here, I was talking about a text I had gotten from one of my seniors who was trying to get a vaccine. Well, she got her vaccine. She's happy. We are thankful to Congressman David Scott. He held a fair in Jonesboro at Mundy's Mill High School and brought 500 vaccines with him to get a lot of our seniors vaccinated, and he said he will return. I am just so thankful to be a part of this chamber, and I thank you all for listening.
Chair recognizes the Majority Whip for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, gentlemen and ladies. I want to bring you another update from our meetings last week on rural broadband. We had another meeting on Thursday in regulated industries where we concluded our reports from all the carriers and providers around the state. We had a good update from the EMCs this time, and I wanted to tell you from the works that we did here 2 years ago with the passage of Senate Bill 2, we are seeing a lot of progress out in rural areas of our state, due mostly to the Amicalola Electrics of the world and the Habersham EMCs of the world. They have made tremendous progress around North Georgia. There's a lot of stuff going on in South Georgia as well. I can tell you that Amicalola and ETC, that's the LJ Telephone Company, talked about their progress. They're going to have $6.75 million of expansion in North Georgia. That'll be in Gilmer County, Lumpkin County, and Dawson County in the next 18 months. Other providers that are involved in EMC broadband deployment are Blue Ridge EMC, Cobb EMC, Diverse Power, and Habersham EMC. This past December, the FCC Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, known as RDOF, under Phase 1, they announced results that would allocate $9.2 billion to 49 states across our country. That's $9.2 billion. This was announced in December of this year. We want to thank our White House and the predecessors in the White House for all that hard work, and of course our Secretary of Agriculture, Mr. Secretary Perdue, that was helping in getting that monies approved and allocated before he left office in January. These dollars are awarded to cable operators, electric co-ops, telephone companies, satellite companies, fixed wireless providers, and any others around the state that have a certificate of authority from the PSC. Georgia secured in this first round in December, Georgia has secured $326 million in federal funding for unserved areas, and that's key. This unserved area is $326 million. $92 million was secured by entities that involve Georgia electric co-ops. Many other projects remain at this time in non-disclosure agreements that are being worked on. There is an announcement coming today at 2 p.m. on the north wing steps of the Capitol with the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the speaker. I would encourage all of you that have an interest in rural broadband to come and listen to that announcement. It's going to be the biggest in our history. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Just as a point of information here, we've got an abnormally high number of folks wanting to present a point of personal privilege, which is fine. I just want to remind everybody that we've got some committee work that's going to start quickly. I think as close to 2 o'clock as we can. So I just wanted to give that as a heads up. Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. This week is Teachers Appreciation Week, and I want to acknowledge and praise our great teachers in this state for the work that they're doing and encourage others to do the same this week. As a father of 3 children who attend public schools here in Georgia, I see firsthand daily the impact teachers are having on their students and within all of our communities. They've had to balance multiple roles and how they innovate in the classroom, support recommended protocols, and work hard to keep a high standard of instructional education on electronic platforms. These situations rely on teachers in multiple roles, which they do well, demonstrating and encouraging positive morale and enthusiasm in constant changing environments. 1 week is simply not enough time to show our appreciation to our educators in this state. Thank you for all you do. Your work does not go unnoticed. I hope you feel very supported and loved, not only this week, but always. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd for a point of personal privilege for the purpose of introducing the doctor of the day. It's a mouthful.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow colleagues, I rise to recognize our doctor of the day, Dr. George Nixon of Augusta. Dr. Nixon earned his BA from Dartmouth College and his medical degree from Meharry Medical College in Tennessee. He is board certified in both family practice and geriatrics. A United States Army veteran, he served at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and in Fort Gordon, Georgia, and retired from the Medical College of Georgia after 30 years of service. But then he returned and served as the medical specialist for the Veterans Facility, nursing home facility in Augusta, and now continues to provide resident supervision and education as a faculty member back in the Department of Family Medicine at Medical College of Georgia. Mr. President, I appreciate our doctor of the day, Dr. George Nixon. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise today to commemorate Black History Month and to honor Georgia's Black community and its long list of contributions to our state and our nation. Specifically, I would like to honor Leah Ward Sears, the former Chief Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court. Sears grew up in Savannah, Georgia, where she attended and graduated from a local public school. She went on to receive her undergraduate degree from Cornell, after which she returned to Georgia and earned her Juris Doctor at Emory University School of Law. In 1988, she became a Superior Court judge, which made her the first Black woman in the state to hold that position. When she was appointed as a state Supreme Court justice in 1992 by former Governor Zell Miller, She became the first woman and the youngest person to sit on Georgia's Supreme Court. In 2005, she became the first black female Chief Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court, of a state Supreme Court in the United States. Each of these accomplishments would be impressive by itself. Sears' remarkable and trailblazing career was and is a source of pride and inspiration for Georgians, African Americans, women, and all Americans who aspire to live in a society based on equality and justice. Sears retired from her position in 2009 when her term as Chief Justice ended. Her tenure on the court was long and illustrious. She served as the voice of integrity and fairness, who stood, sometimes alone, for equality under law and the rights of all Georgians, regardless of their race, gender, sexuality, or ideology. She wrote several dissenting opinions in cases involving law enforcement, in her opinion, overstepping their legal authority, as well as in cases involving the constitutional rights of defendants. Sears' achievements and her contributions to Georgia are manyfold. She has spent the majority of her life in service of the law, whether in public or private practice, or as a professor of law at local universities, and in defense of a foundational principle of our great nation, that all men and women are created equal and must be treated as such under the law. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 8th for a point of personal privilege.
Friends, I come to the well today with a heavy heart. I'm sad to report that just over the last few days, in unrelated incidences, 2 teenagers in our South Georgia community have attempted suicide. One was the son of a very close friend, and our families have been friends for generations. One passed away, and the other is on a ventilator in the hospital. So it's with a weary heart, but yet looking to the good of humanity, that I sat down this weekend and I penned these words. Before I start, I'm reminded of the words of Robin Williams. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always. Over the last several months, my heart has become weary. I've become weary of the state of the world today. I'm weary of the divisiveness and ugliness that exists. As the father of 2 boys, JR, who is 16, and Alec, who is 13, I'm worried about the country and world that they will inherit. To tell the truth, they are confronted with things that we as children never faced. When some of us were growing up, social media did not exist. We didn't have round-the-clock talking heads on television vilifying those of different political persuasions. I wish my children could grow up in the simpler times that I remember from my country childhood, a childhood of building creek dams, cropping tobacco, and relying on the 6 o'clock news with only the 3 major news networks. I wish some of our friends in the media would spend more time reporting on all the good that exists in the world. Our children need it, our country needs it, and indeed, all of humanity needs it. The national temperature has become so hot that our children can't help but feel the scald that we as adults have injected into our national political discourse. It's past time that we dial the temperature down, that we return to an era of civility, an era where we can discuss our differences without diminishing each other's humanity. I can only imagine the toll these past several months have taken on our children. They've been forced to stay home from school. They are isolated from their friends while we social distance through a global pandemic that has taken the lives of so many of our loved ones. They watched this summer as peaceful protests turned violent, destructive. They bore witness to a highly contested election that only served to further divide our fractured nation, culminating in the events of January the 6th. I believe in our hearts that we all yearn for some positivity, and we long to hear stories that speak of human kindness. Today I rise to share a story of the good in people, the good that truly at its core defines our humanity, because I truly believe that people are good. This story begins in 1915 in the little farming community I call home. Cogdale, Georgia isn't much, but it's home. We don't have any street lights or sidewalks. One must drive 11 miles to buy a loaf of bread or a gallon of gas. Our little corner of rural Georgia is only known for the small part that it played in the development of the Georgia forestry industry and the fact that we are the proud birthplace and childhood home of famed actor and civil rights activist Ossie Davis. In 1915, my wife's great-great-grandfather, F.B. Sermons, along with his son-in-law, A.K. Sessoms, were looking to build a railroad. As a matter of fact, F.B. Sermons represented my area of South Georgia for many years as a member in this chamber. Since they made their living in the forestry industry, they needed a way to get their wood products to Valdosta and Waycross. Somehow, A.K. Sessoms came to know a man by the name of Kent Davis. Kent Davis was a black man, and although he didn't have an engineering degree from a prestigious university, he did know what it took to build a railroad. A.K. Sessoms decided to hire Kent Davis to be the railroad foreman. He tasked him with overseeing the construction of what would become the 42-mile railroad that ran from what at the time was known as Milltown and is today known as Lakeland to Waycross. The railroad would be named the Waycross and Western. It has long been a family joke that at 42 miles it may not have been as long as most railroads, but it was just as wide as any of them. But the world being as it was in 1915, some in the community didn't appreciate my wife's grandfather or Mr. Davis. They didn't appreciate Mr. Sessoms for offering the position to Mr. Davis, and they didn't appreciate Mr. Davis for accepting it. Nonetheless, despite the threats and hostility from many in the community, they faced down those who stood against them, and together they went to work and they built the railroad. 2 years later, on December the 18th, 1917, just a few hundred yards from where my house sits, Kent Davis and his wife Laura welcomed a son into the world and named him Rayford Chapman Davis. He inadvertently became known as Ozzie when his birth certificate was filed and his mother's pronunciation of his name as R.C. was misunderstood by the clerk in our local courthouse. Ozzie was only 3 years younger than my wife's grandfather, and they grew up roaming those South Georgia flatwoods together. Ozzie would spend many of his formative years in Cogdale and would eventually go on to live a remarkable life, attending Howard University, Columbia University, and embarking on an acting career that would bring him worldwide fame and acclamation. He would marry actress Ruby Dee, and together they became a force in the fight for civil rights and in the acting world. In 1989, they were named to the NAACP Image Awards Hall of Fame. In 1994, Ozzie was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame. In 1995, they were together awarded the National Medal of Arts, the nation's highest honor, conferred to an individual artist on behalf of the country. The medal was presented in a White House ceremony by the president. And finally, in 2004, they were the recipients of the prestigious Kennedy Center honors. There he was, a son of a little country hamlet like Cogdale, standing in the White House with some of the most influential people in the world. In a small way, standing before you today in the well of the Georgia State Senate as a member of this body, I, as a son of Cogdale, myself, can only imagine how that must have felt. Throughout Ossie Davis's life, he never forgot his roots. He would return to Cogdale often to visit old friends and family. On his last visit to town, some 75 years after construction of the railroad began, my wife's grandfather, Alec Jr., Ossie's childhood friend, presented him with the only model train that the family still had of the old Waycross and Western. In presenting it to him, Alec, or as we knew him, Big Daddy, put his arm around Ossie and said, "Ossie, you should have this. We're proud of you and all that you've accomplished." He then joked and he said, "Ossie, you've made it to the big time. Just always remember that growing up, you warmed your tail by this old Cogdale firewood a many a night." I think it's fair to say that he never forgot, and he never forgot the lifelong friendships he made in a little place called Cogdale, Georgia. The old A.K. Sessoms farmhouse, built in 1911, is still in our family. Directly in front of the house runs the old railroad bed of the Waycross and Western. A couple of years ago, we were blessed to have Governor Kemp, First Lady Marty Kemp, and their oldest daughter Jarrett spend the night with us in the old farmhouse. Governor Kemp asked me about the old railroad bed, and I enjoyed having the opportunity to tell him the story of our family, the railroad, and of course, Ossie Davis. The fact that a sitting governor was spending the night in that old farmhouse speaks volumes to his feelings towards rural Georgia, and is one of the reasons, as a rural Georgian, I'm proud to serve as a floor leader in his administration. As we celebrate Black History Month, I'm proud of the important part that Cogdale played in Ossie Davis's remarkable life. Not many years ago, I was visiting the American Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee. As I was looking at the wall of fame of all the people who fought for civil rights, there, right in the middle of all those famous figures, was a photo of Ozzie Davis. As I stand before you today, just an old plowboy from Cogdale, it has indeed been my honor to have the opportunity to reflect on an amazing life that began in those piney woods, a place I love and call home. With all the problems that our world faces, I think we sometimes forget that our history is filled with stories like this, stories that show the good in humanity. Because no matter how inundated we are with smartphones and television, we must remember that there is so much more good in the world than bad. For our children's sake, for the future of our country, and for the mental health of all of humanity, it is now more important than ever that we be the good in the world. Our light must shine on our children like sunbeams through the pines. Let us pray that that light will serve to lead them from the darkness. Ozzie Davis was a close friend to Dr. Martin Luther King and helped organize...
Senator, your time has expired.
Can I finish that much? Yes, sir. Okay. Ozzie Davis was a close friend of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. and helped organize the famous 1963 March on Washington. In closing, I'd like to use the words of Dr. King. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. I commit to you, my colleagues, that I will follow the example of Ozzie Davis and Dr. King, and I ask you to join me. May we strive in our daily lives as leaders in the state of Georgia to be that light. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to celebrate New Americans Day here in the state of Georgia. In my district, District 41, there are hundreds of people who have been resettled as refugees, people who faced war and torture, religious persecution, people who had to flee because of their sexual orientation or simply because of their political views. From refugee camps to our great state, we have welcomed thousands of new Americans here in Georgia. Whether you live in Dade County or Rabun, from Seminole County to Camden, and everywhere else in between, there are new Americans living in your districts and in your counties. They are teachers and pastors. They are farm workers. They are first responders. They are so much. 1/3 of every business on a main street is owned by someone who is foreign-born in this great state of Georgia. 1/10 of all Georgians were born somewhere else outside of these United States. On this day, I celebrate the contributions of those who were not born here, but who have called Georgia home now. And in a little while, we'll have an opportunity to pass a bill that will allow us to study those contributions further. And I ask that you all will consider that, because I know from my own district that the contributions to our economy are many because of those who have found refuge here in our state. On this day, I celebrate and I salute all of our new Americans. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I rise to celebrate this moment in Black history. The Super Bowl was yesterday. We observe history being made, with this being the 55th year of the annual World Football Championship, the Super Bowl. And many don't realize that professional football goes back farther than the late 1960s. In the early 1900s, we were introduced to a multi-position player, Jim Thorpe, the original GOAT, the first Native American to ever play professional football, deemed the greatest athlete of all times. And in 1920, Fitz Plourlett, a championship quarterback and a player coach for the New York Giants, who along with a multi-purpose back and kicker, Bobby Marshall, became two of the first African Americans to play in the National Football League. General narratives will lead you to believe that these gentlemen were the foundation of integration in professional football within North America. And from that point, in the year 1920, African Americans, Native Americans, and people of color in general were permanently integrated into the sports. However, this is not true. As Fitz Pollard and others would go on to retire, the NFL would passively retire its idea toward sustaining integration. For 13 years, beginning in 1933, the NFL owners would not sign one black athlete for 13 years. There is no written rule against signing black players, but the owners would establish a gentleman's agreement against signing black players. But this would change once a lifetime athlete by the name of Kenny Washington, a graduate of UCLA, was introduced to football. The Los Angeles Rams signed Kenny Washington. The Rams at that time was located in Cleveland and was preparing to make a move to Los Angeles and the Los Angeles Memorial Stadium. And with this move came a major shift in league ownership. During the time period of the city of Los Angeles had a balanced presence of black and white citizens in the conditions of the Rams football club moving into LA the team was being publicly owned, meaning that blacks and white taxpayers had a voice in team operation. And on March 21st, 1946, Rams general manager Charlie Wash signed Kenny Washington, the first African-American player signed into what currently is known as the National Football League during his foundation years and after a 13-year passive ban on signing black athletes. Kenny Washington would re-break the race barriers looming over the NFL during the same year that Jackie Robinson would integrate baseball, both men becoming icons that opens up many opportunities for young athletes of color across the world. Things started to change when the people of Los Angeles woke up in 1946. In 1946, people wanted to end segregation. So we tell you in 2021, we encourage you to stay woke. This has been your year. This has been my moment in black history.
Thank you, Senator. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? For what purpose does the majority whip rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I object to Senate Resolution 77 on the consent calendar.
Senate Resolution 77 will be sent to the Rules Committee. Is there objection to the adoption of the resolutions on the remainder of the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that Senate Bill 76 be withdrawn from the Committee on Regulated Industries and be committed to the Committee on Public Safety.
Senator, have both chairmen agreed to this?
Have.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
Senate Bill 76 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 12 of Chapter 3 of Title 38 and Part 4 of Article 2 of Chapter 5 of Title 46 of the OCGA relating to Emergency Communications Authority and Emergency Telephone Number 911 system, respectively, so as to provide for Next Generation 911. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 56 has asked for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 76 be withdrawn from the Committee on Regulated Industries and be committed to the Committee on Public Safety. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is so. All right, moving on, under previous order, the next item of business is the consideration of the governor's appointments to the various boards, commissions, and authorities. The list of these appointments are on your desk. Mr. Secretary, will you please read the report of the committee?
Mr. President, the Committee on Assignments has recommended that the appointments made by the governor be confirmed as submitted with the exception of the first two names on the list, to wit, Honorable Richard Hyde and Honorable Bob Barr, who are currently serving terms of office on the Judicial Qualifications Commission and therefore do not require Senate confirmation. This completes the order, Mr. President.
It has come to the chair's attention that there are a couple of clerical errors still on these appointments that they're working through at the governor's office, just small, minor clerical errors and typos. It's the chair's recommendation to put these appointments back on the table. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and they're placed on the table temporarily. It's now time to consider the confirmation of other appointments to the Judicial Qualifications Commission. The Secretary will read the committee reports and the names submitted for confirmation.
Mr. President, today the Committee on Assignments recommended that the following names submitted to the Senate for appointment to the Judicial Qualifications Commission be confirmed as submitted. The appointments are as follows. Mr. James Bali, appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Honorable Robert McBurney, appointed by the Supreme Court of Georgia. The letters requesting confirmation of the appointees are attached. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Majority Leader for the purpose of a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that one roll call suffice to confirm both appointments to the Judicial Qualifications Commission.
The Majority Leader has asked that unanimous consent to allow for confirmation of the appointments to the Judicial Qualifications Commission by one roll call vote. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and we will proceed with one roll call vote for both appointees. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader again for a motion.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that the appointees to the Judicial Qualifications Commission made by the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Supreme Court be confirmed as submitted.
The Majority Leader has moved that the appointees to the JQC Commission be confirmed as submitted. The question is on the confirmation of the appointments to the Judicial Qualifications Commission. All those in favor will vote the yea. All opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Anybody in the hallway? We don't see anybody. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the confirmation of the appointments to the Judicial Qualifications Commission, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. And the appointments are therefore confirmed. It's now time to move on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Bill 5?
Senate Bill number 5 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 43 of the OCGA relating to professions and business is so as to provide patient protection measures for patients undergoing sedation in certain settings, to provide for patients under conscious sedation in dental settings, and for dental procedures in menopause. This completes the order. Sorry. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read amendment number 1?
Senators Jordan of the 6th offered the following amendment 1 to Senate Bill number 5 by renumbering Section 3 as Section 4 and adding a new Section 3 at line 169 to revise Code Section 43-11-21.1 as follows. By striking the period at the end of section 43-11-21.1 and adding and has demonstrated an understanding of the increased risk of non-medical harms like sexual assault that can occur due to a patient or patient's inability to protect themselves while under the effects of anesthesia. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd to speak to the bill and the amendment. The bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 5 will look familiar to some of you because we passed it unanimously out of the Senate in exactly this format last year. It's a patient safety bill. It relates to conscious sedation in the outpatient setting, including med-spas, medical, and dental offices. This bill resulted from the death of 2 young women in my county having cosmetic surgery in a med-spa. Currently, there are guidelines in place by the medical and dental boards, but they find out about these cases after the fact. Conscious sedation is often referred to as twilight anesthesia. The bill simply states that anyone doing conscious sedation, anything other than local anesthesia, will follow the rules of the medical board or the dental board. I understand there's an amendment coming, and with all due respect to the senator from the 6th, I've been working on this bill for now a year and a half, and I just saw the amendment a few minutes ago. I haven't had an opportunity to fully work through all the potential ramifications of the amendment, and so I would prefer to leave the bill as is. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does any senator have a question? The chair sees none.
Thank you. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th to speak to her amendment.
Much like the reasons that the senator from the 32nd pursued this bill with respect to conscious sedation, similarly, I am putting forward this amendment because of another situation that happened in Cobb County, where an 18-year-old girl was at a dental facility getting a cosmetic dental procedure done. She was put under general anesthesia. She was left under general anesthesia after the procedure for approximately 2 hours. And during that period of time, she was not supervised and she was sexually assaulted. Now, let's be clear. With respect to professionals, they say, we're not supposed to leave people alone in a room, right? That's what they're trained, all that kind of stuff. The problem is that if you have a dentist who hasn't been trained in anesthesia and does not know some of the implications with respect to rendering a patient completely vulnerable from being able to protect themselves, then it is important to make sure that it's reiterated that when someone is under general anesthesia, they shouldn't be left alone. The person should be supervised if it's a CRNA, actually administering the anesthesia. And that really is just about patient protection. I mean, really all this amendment does is to say that when a dentist gets a permit that allows him or her to administer general anesthesia in their dental office, we're not even talking about in a hospital setting, but in their dental office, when they do that, they at least need to have an understanding of the dangers associated with leaving a patient vulnerable and under the effects of anesthesia, just to make sure that that patient is not sexually assaulted. I don't think that this is a difficult thing. I don't think there are ramifications, anything like that. It's really just to kind of reiterate what we should already be doing anyway in terms of practice, and just making sure that dentists who may not have had appropriate anesthesia training know that and can appreciate that if they're actually going to do this in their dental office. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes.
I applaud this amendment that you have brought, which is very straightforward and simple. And I would also, I'm familiar with that case that you described in Cobb County. It was a horrible thing that happened to that patient who was simply there, for dental work, and put under general anesthesia. And so, I think this. You've found a loophole that needs to be addressed, and it's not only just in terms of the danger of a sexual assault, but leaving a person under general anesthesia untended can have all other sorts of potential consequences. That's why they have recovery rooms in hospitals, and they have trained staff that are there monitoring throughout, bringing a person back out of that state of unconsciousness. So I think it's a great addition to the laws that we have right now. Are you optimistic that you'll get support for this across the hall?
Look, I think it's very difficult to sit there and say that it is appropriate for a dentist to render a patient basically unconscious and unable to protect themselves, and to say that it is okay to leave them alone in a room and leave them unsupervised. So with respect to that, I would hope so across the hall, because it's about as straightforward as you can get. Let me tell you something. If it was anybody in here's 18-year-old daughter that was sexually assaulted and then had that sexual assault videoed, and then she had to identify herself in the video, let me tell y'all, I think y'all would be jumping at the opportunity to actually vote on this and vote affirmatively. So thank you, Senator.
Yeah, further question is, the dental profession, I'm sure, would welcome this with open arms. We have a wonderful dental profession in this state.
Absolutely.
We rely on it. We rely on their excellence. And this simply addresses a situation that needs to be addressed. It's not an attack on the profession. It supports the profession.
And in fact, the dentists, including one of our own, anybody who's actually doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of their professional ethics and standards and standard of care, they don't have a problem with this. I mean, all it basically says is that people should have an understanding that when somebody is under anesthesia, that makes them more vulnerable. I mean, that's, like I said, that's about as straightforward as it gets.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions?
Recognize Senator from the 27th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
I just want to make sure that I want to make sure that I understand exactly where this is going. You're looking to essentially insert this after consciousness in line 95, is that correct?
No, and so let me explain it to you, because it does seem a little, and I understand that. With respect to what the senator from the 32nd, her bill is section 431121, dealing with conscious sedation. So the next step up, and with conscious sedation, like she explained, it deals with twilight, people being able to respond, that kind of stuff. The next step up in terms of sedation or being anesthetized is general anesthesia, where a patient really can't respond, can't protect themselves. So really with respect to this is an amendment to 431121.1, and basically just says that when a dentist, not an anesthesiologist, not a CRNA, but a dentist who wants to administer general anesthesia at his or her dentist office, they have to get a permit, and there are certain things they have to do in order to get that permit. And all this does is not only do they need to demonstrate that they have a proficiency with respect to administering anesthesia, but that they also have an understanding that there are other attendant harms that can happen with patients when that patient is under the effects of anesthesia.
Do you further yield?
Yes.
Do you I don't. Do you happen to have 431121.1 so that you can enumerate the requirements that you just alluded to, please?
Yes. Number one, has success. Do you really want me to read these? Number one, has successfully completed a minimum of 1 year of advanced training in anesthesiology and related academic subjects beyond the undergraduate dental school level at an institution accredited by the Commission on Dental Accreditation of the American Dental Association or its successor agency, or by a nationally recognized healthcare accreditation body for hospitals, or is a diplomat of the American Board of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery, is a member of the American Association of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons, or is a fellow of the American Dental Society of Anesthesiology. Number 2, utilizes a properly equipped facility for the administration of general anesthesia, including physical plant and equipment, which has been evaluated and certified by an on-site examination. And then finally, 3, which this amends, has demonstrated in the satisfaction of the board or any designee thereof proficiency in administering general anesthesia on a patient or patients in the dentist's office in a safe and effective manner, with the amendment adding, and has demonstrated an understanding of the increased risk of non-medical harms like sexual assault that can occur due to a patient or patient's inability to protect themselves while under the effects of anesthesia.
Thank you. Do you further yield? That's helpful, because I was going to ask you, my next question was going to be, how, in your view, how would they, quote, demonstrate an understanding of? They're already demonstrating an understanding of something in the previous section 2 that you had there, I believe. It stated that.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you happen to know how that happens?
Well, I think in terms of the administration, I mean, they have to show that they can administer anesthesia, and then there's advanced training and the like with respect to that. But in terms of an understanding of what else can happen, obviously this is already talked about in medical schools and part of the training in terms of anesthesiology and the like. The question is in terms of dentists, right? And if they're going to actually go in and administer general anesthesia, we just want to make sure that this extra component is in there.
Thank you.
Call upon the senator for the 20th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes.
Senator, is it not true that this body consistently passes legislation for patient safety, and we would all be for patient safety?
Yes, which is why this amendment should pass easily, Senator.
Will you further yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that we are fairly early in the session?
Well, depending on COVID, I guess we are in terms of days.
And Senator, if you'll further yield, isn't it true we have a committee process that would be able to vet a measure like this that I think has merit with people on the committee that are familiar with the profession, and it would give an opportunity for testimony and input and a good vetting process, and we are early enough in the session that you can introduce a general bill to address what you're trying to do through this amendment.
Senator, respectfully, that's supposed to be the process, but as we know, being a member of the minority party makes it a little bit more difficult to get things through this body. So with respect to this is germane, it's appropriate, it's in favor of patient safety, and like I said, I think it's as simple and as straightforward as it can possibly get.
Senator, would you further yield?
Sure.
Senator, have you talked to the author of Senate Bill 5 about your amendment?
Yes.
Okay. One more question, Senator. Isn't it true that I would be probably supportive of you introducing a general bill to address this, and I think that would be a more appropriate way to handle this than attaching it kind of at the last minute when we don't have time to thoroughly vet it?
I would hope that you would be supportive of this amendment or however other way this would come before this body.
Thank you, Senator.
Call upon the senator from the 13th for a question.
I'll wait.
The senator waves off. Call upon the senator from the 52nd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. With Senator Yield,
Yes.
I'm trying to catch up here and understand this. I don't know of any dentists that do general anesthesia.
I'm sorry.
And
There's too much noise. I'm sorry, Senator.
I was saying I don't know of any dentists that do general anesthesia, and I would also argue that nobody would be doing general anesthesia and surgery at the same time. I'm a little bit confused on this because, you know, I know in our profession we can't be involved in the surgery. It's two completely separate jobs. So I'm trying to catch up with you and understand this. It's something I've never known of any dentist doing before in regards to general anesthesia.
Senator, I'm not sure I would go to a dentist that would administer general anesthesia, but it's absolutely allowed under the code. And in fact, that's the whole point of these code sections. With respect to Senate Bill 5, it deals with conscious sedation in the dental practice, right, in the permitting of dentists for that. With respect to my amendment, which is the next code section over, it deals with the administration of general anesthesia by a dentist or within a dental practice with that dentist supervising someone like a CRNA to be able to actually give the anesthesia. And in fact, this code section 431121.1 starts, no dentist shall administer general anesthesia on an outpatient basis unless such dentist has been issued a permit by the board. So it does happen. It is sanctioned by the state, and in fact, that's the whole purpose of the code section.
The Senator yield for one more question.
Absolutely.
You know, when we think of them as doing it, it's not that they're actually doing it, it's that it's being done in their office and they would be supervising it. So again, I'm real confused on this. It's just not something I've ever seen. If the code section is actually saying they do it or it's done under their supervision, that's what confuses me.
It's both ways, and specifically with respect to this amendment, I think it may be even more important when they're actually supervising someone like a CRNA, because at that point, the dentist needs to know him or herself exactly what the issues or the dangers are if they're actually going to be supervising another medical professional.
Call upon the senator from the 55th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield,
Yes, for the leader.
with respect to the process of perfecting a bill, is it not true that the committee process is not the only process that you can use?
You're exactly right, Senator, and to be, you know, blunt and straightforward, the amendment process is sometimes the only process actually available to the minority party.
That is correct, and that means that you have to do the amendments. If you can't do them in the committee, then you bring it to the floor.
Yes.
That is the process. Thank you.
Call upon the senator from the 34th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes.
Senator, is it not true that this amendment helps to make a good bill better?
Absolutely, and really this is just about empowering the dental profession and the dental board to be able to actually promulgate their rules and make sure that they can strengthen whatever they're doing relative to patient protection, which I believe is the very purpose of this bill.
Senator Further Yield.
Yes.
Is it not true that there are more dentists that are having oral surgeries and the such in offices nowadays? And with that, we have so many more youth that are going to get different procedures done. And this amendment is just for their protection. Is that not true?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we know that just in terms of cosmetic procedures and the like. It's become much more prevalent, definitely in the metro Atlanta area and Cobb County, Fulton. And I think that this is just, like I said, it's just one more thing that we can do with respect to making sure that people are protected when they're under anesthesia.
Senator.
Senator, you have no more questions.
Thank you.
Is there objection to the amendment? Senator Kirkpatrick, would you like to close? Excuse me, Senator from the 32nd, would you like to close or speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I just want to clarify one thing. No attempt was made to amend this bill in committee, and I'm sympathetic to the content, but with all due respect, my lawyer colleague is trying to amend a non-existent code section, and I'd be happy if she'd like to correct that to try to help her get this added back in on the House side. So I'm voting no on this. I yield the will.
Does anyone else care to speak for or against the measure? Is there objection to the amendment? Hearing objection, all those in favor of the amendment will rise, stand, and be counted. Why do you rise? I don't hear machine vote. We need 5 persons. All in favor of the yeas and nays, rise, stand, and be counted. Clearly, we have 5. Thank you very much. The question is on the adoption of the amendment by the senator from the 6th. Is there objection to the amendment? There is. There is objection, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary, if you'll lock machines. All those in favor of the amendment will vote yea. All those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you'll lock the machines. On the adoption of the amendment, the nays are 26 and the yeas are 18. The adoption has failed. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. Main question is being ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you'll unlock the machines. Mr. Secretary, if you'll lock the machines. On the passage of the bills, the yeas are 45. The nays are 0. And this bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Okay. The chair recognizes the majority leader for a purpose of a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on Tuesday, February 9th, 2021.
The majority leader has moved. The secretary will read the announcements.
The Rules Committee will meet upon adjournment in room 450. Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee will meet at 2:15 in mezzanine 1. Judiciary Committee will meet at 3:30 in 307 CLOB. Science and Technology Committee will meet at 3:30 in room 450. Education and Youth Committee will meet at 4:45 in room 307 CLOB. And the Ethics Committee is canceled. This completes the order, Mr. President.
One further announcement, Mr. Secretary, if I may. For those of you who might have missed our morning tests on Monday and Thursday, which typically take place from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., and today occurred from 8 a.m. till noon, you can get that test at room 404 on the balcony level of the Sloppy Floyd building from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., room 404, balcony level. Please get your test. Thank you very much. The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 at 10 a.m. All those in favor will say, hold on. You got an announcement?
The Committee on Agriculture will meet after rules.
The Committee on Agriculture will meet upon rules adjournment. All those in favor of the motion by the majority leader will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Those opposed will say no. The ayes clearly have it. We stand adjourned.